You think silence makes you untouchable? Say something. S-A-Y something.
Step back, sir. This section is for first-class passengers only. The words cut through the hum of the cabin sharp, rehearsed, policy cold. A flight attendant towers above him, hand pointing, voice rising. Behind her, the captain watches, arms locked. Passengers freeze mid-sip. A woman near the window lifts her phone recording. The black CEO doesn't argue. He adjusts his cuff, eyes steady, unshaken. He whispers, "Log everything." Why South Odor? 30 minutes from now, no one on this flight will still have a job. 7:45 a.m., 30 minutes before takeoff. The cabin lights hummed a sterile white, reflecting off rows of leather seats and metal fixtures. Passengers settled in, their voices a soft blend of privilege and caffeine. A flight attendant in a Navy uniform moved briskly down the aisle, scanning boarding passes like a customs officer checking passports to heaven. Then her tone shifted. "Sir, this section is for first-class passengers only." The sentence didn't slip, it landed. Loud, crisp, mechanical, every syllable wrapped in practiced authority. She wasn't asking, she was declaring. Across from her sat a man in a dark blazer, calm, still fastening his seatbelt. He didn't look confused or defiant, just steady. His posture carried quiet authority, the kind that made noise uncomfortable. But that only seemed to bother her more. I said, "This section is for first class only," she repeated, voice slicing through the cabin. A few heads turned. One passenger lowered his newspaper. Another tugged out an AirPod. The air shifted tense, brittle, waiting. The man looked up. Voice, even. "I know. That's my seat." Her jaw tightened. "Sir, please don't make this difficult. We have procedures. You need to step back to economy." At that, a faint sound came from the aisle behind her. A whisper. A suppressed laugh. Someone muttered, "Guess he wandered up here by mistake." The attendant didn't correct them. She leaned closer instead, lowering her voice just enough to sound official, but not enough to hide the disdain. "You'll need to move. Now." He didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch. Instead, he turned slightly, glancing toward the name tag, pinned to her jacket. "Are you sure you want to do this by the book?" Her brows drew together. "Excuse me." Before she could say more, the captain appeared in the aisle. Expression neutral, arms crossed. A man summoned to keep order. "What's going on here?" "Unauthorized passenger in first class," she said quickly. "He's refusing to comply." The captain's eyes swept over the seated man, lingering a moment too long on the skin. The calm, the certainty. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" The man reached into his jacket and handed it over without a word. The captain glanced at it, then at the attendant. "It says, first class, seat 2A. "Then it's fake," she said. "We've had scams before." From the corner of the cabin, a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a phone camera starting to record. A woman 2 rows back whispered, "I'm getting this." Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A murmur rippled through the air. He could have argued, could have shouted, could have demanded names. He didn't. He simply took a slow breath and spoke 4 words that would change everything. "Log everything right now." The attendant frowned. "Excuse me?" But he was already lifting his phone, calm fingers unlocking the screen. A call connected. "Good morning, Maggie. It's Dorian Brandt. Pull up the Horizon Air contract file." Pause. Yes, the full one. The attendant's confidence wavered. "Sir? Who exactly are you?" He didn't look at her. His gaze stayed forward, voice low, deliberate. "Freeze all pending payments to Horizon Air, effective immediately." A few passengers gasped. The captain's eyes flickered, uncertain. The woman recording whispered, "Wait, what did he just say?" The man, still composed, still sitting, finally looked up. "You have 30 minutes until that system update hits," he said quietly. "I suggest you use them wisely." Silence. Pure, pressurized silence. The kind that doesn't fade, It spreads. Somewhere near the cockpit, a radio crackled with static. Operations, we're seeing a corporate freeze alert from Brandt Global Holdings. Does that sound right? The captain turned slowly. The attendant's lips parted, speechless. No one spoke. No one dared to. The woman filming lowered her phone just enough to whisper, "This is about to go viral." The man adjusted his cuff again, gaze steady, voice softer now. "You see, this isn't about a seat," he said. "It's about how you treat the people who own the plane you're flying. In Tao, maybe Wei." He leaned back, calm returning like gravity finding its place. Outside the window, the morning sun caught the wing, brilliant, merciless, inevitable. 30 minutes left. The countdown had begun. 7:54 a.m., 21 minutes before takeoff. The aircraft door was still open, a stream of cool air seeping in from the jet bridge. The first-class cabin, once a bubble of comfort, now pulsed with quiet judgment. The attendant who'd started it all straightened her blazer like armor. She was trying to regain control of the room. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to power off that device," she said, her tone tighter now. "You can make business calls once we're airborne." Across from her, Dorian Brandt looked up from his phone, not defiant, simply unhurried. "That call wasn't business," he replied. "That was infrastructure." The phrase hung there, confusing enough to rattle her confidence. Behind her, 2 flight officers exchanged glances. The captain's radio buzzed again, faint and distorted. Operations just flagged a payment hold from Brandt Global Check status. He silenced it with a flick of his thumb. A passenger in row 3 leaned toward the aisle. "What's going on?" "Some kind of glitch," the attendant answered too quickly. "Everything's fine." But her voice cracked on fine. A ripple of unease ran through the cabin. Someone coughed. Someone whispered. The woman with the phone, still recording, zoomed in, catching the captain's uneasy face. The chat on her live stream began to blow up. "Who is this guy? Why's the crew so nervous?" Dorian turned his head slightly, addressing the captain with quiet civility. "I'd appreciate it if your staff stopped filming me and started checking your internal comms. You'll find your manifest updating any second now." The captain hesitated, then looked down at his tablet. The passenger list blinked, lines of text refreshing automatically. A red banner appeared. "Horizon Air contract freeze initiated, payment suspended." "What the f—" he murmured. The attendant leaned over to look. Her face paled. "That's not possible." "It's real," Dorian said softly. "It'll cascade through maintenance, catering, fuel, logistics in about 19 minutes. Someone gasped. The sound of typing came from the jump seat behind the curtain, another crew member sending frantic messages to ground operations. "Sir," the captain said, lowering his voice, "I need to understand what authority you have to—" "You will," Dorian interrupted, not unkindly, "once corporate calls back." At that exact moment, the overhead speakers crackled. "Captain Lewis, please contact gate operations immediately." Every passenger heard it. The hush that followed was heavy enough to bend air. The attendant tried again, clinging to protocol. "Mr. Brandt, was it? Look, we can sort this out privately if you'll just step off the aircraft for a moment." Dorian's gaze didn't waver. "No need. The system's already boarding the truth." From the back row, a businessman muttered, "This is unbelievable." Another passenger added, "He warned her. She didn't listen." Minutes crawled. Phones vibrated in pockets as news of the freeze began leaking from the airline's internal network. In the terminal outside, a ground agent stared at her monitor. Every Horizon Air flight status had shifted from on time to delayed corporate hold. Inside the cabin, tension thickened like pressurized air. The captain pressed his earpiece. "Say again? Ops?" "Yes, we're still at gate A17. His eyes darted toward Dorian, disbelief turning to recognition. He'd seen the name before on a plaque at a shareholder summit. Dorian Brandt, chairman, Brandt Global Holdings. The attendant followed his stare. Realization hit her like turbulence. Dorian spoke once more, quietly enough that only those nearest could hear. "I asked you to log everything, because in 19 minutes, this airline will need proof of who caused the shutdown. No anger, no triumph, just fact." He folded his hands, gaze resting on the window where a maintenance truck had stopped mid-motion on the tarmac. Even the outside world seemed to freeze. 7:59 a.m. 26 minutes until departure. That would never happen. The countdown continued, invisible yet unstoppable, ticking through every digital heartbeat of the airline system and through every uneasy breath inside that cabin. Gohekson, Visa Man, 15 minutes before takeoff. The hum of the engines shifted to silence. The usual rhythm of boarding calls and safety checks vanished like someone had hit mute on reality. The cabin crew whispered near the galley, voices low, eyes darting toward seat 2, toward him. Dorian Brandt sat motionless, one leg crossed, the calmest person in the room. His phone rested face down on the tray table, the screen still pulsing with notifications from Brandt Global's legal division. Each ping was a domino falling somewhere far beyond this plane. At the front, the captain rubbed the back of his neck. "Ops, confirm that freeze order again," he said into his mic. A burst of static, then a clipped response. "Confirmed. All Horizon flights are grounded pending verification. Finance wants answers." He looked up. The attendant who had confronted Dorian was pale now, her polished confidence stripped away. The passenger behind her whispered, "Is he serious? Can one person really shut down an airline?" No one answered. Dorian's voice finally broke the silence. "Funny thing about infrastructure," he said softly, as if speaking to the air. "It listens faster than people do." The attendant blinked. "Sir, I didn't mean—" "I know," he interrupted. "You just followed policy." He let that word hang, policy, until it felt poisonous. Through the window, movement on the tarmac had slowed. A catering truck sat half unloaded, a luggage cart abandoned mid-route. The sunlight hit the metal skin of the plane like a cold warning. In the first-class galley, the intercom crackled again. "Captain Lewis, corporate HQ on line 1. Already Ignosen." The captain turned, pressing a button on the wall phone. "This is Lewis." He listened, nodding once, twice. Then his expression hardened. Understood. "Boaters," with Rever. When he turned back, his voice was quieter but carried weight. "They want the names of everyone involved in the incident." The attendant's throat tightened. I was just following bed." "Policy," Dorian said again. "I heard—" A passenger 3 rows back exhaled audibly. Another raised his phone, streaming live to social media. Comments flooded in. "He's the investor. They messed with the wrong man." The cabin was no longer a plane. It was a courtroom. The woman who had been recording from the start, seat 4C, window side, lowered her voice. "Sir, is it true? You own part of Horizon?" Dorian turned slightly toward her. "Ownership is paperwork," he said. "Accountability is choice." At the back of the cabin, a security officer stepped in, summoned by the earlier call. He froze mid-stride, sensing the shift. "Captain, what's the situation?" The captain hesitated. "Containment," he said flatly. "Just containment." Dorian watched him with detached calm. The silence stretched until even the hum of the air vents felt accusatory. Then his phone vibrated once more, a message from Maggie. "Freeze confirmed. News leak in progress. CNN just picked it up." He didn't smile. He simply whispered, "That was fast." "Domi Balwei." The attendant swallowed hard, glancing toward the passengers. All eyes were on her now, not him. She looked like someone realizing the stage lights had turned her into the villain. Dorian leaned back. "You see," he said softly, "I didn't have to raise my voice. The system did it for me." The captain cleared his throat. "Mr. Brandt, what would you like us to do?" "Nothing," Dorian replied. "Just wait." Outside, ground control screens were flashing red. Flights delayed. Terminals backed up. Executives dialing emergency numbers. Inside the cabin, the seconds felt like hours. The slow unraveling of arrogance into fear. 8, 9 a.m. 21 minutes past boarding. 15 minutes until the world knew exactly what happened on Flight 472. The countdown kept ticking, quiet, merciless, and very much alive. 8:00 Scharfen, a.m. 12 minutes before takeoff. The plane hadn't moved an inch, but the air inside felt thinner now. Everyone could sense it, that quiet, suffocating tension before something irreversible. The once pristine first-class cabin looked frozen in a photograph of discomfort. No one was reading. No one was breathing right. The flight attendant stood by the galley phone, whispering frantically to someone on the other end. Her voice trembled. "No! I didn't know who he was!" He said his name, but she stopped mid-sentence, glancing toward Dorian's seat. Yes, he's still here. What a saber elder. The captain rubbed his forehead, exhaustion written across his face. Ops says half our fleet's been delayed. Finance can't process fuel orders. Whatever he did, it's spreading fast. Who is he? The co-pilot whispered. The captain hesitated. The man who signs your paychecks? Apparently. At that, the attendant's knees nearly buckled. She turned toward Dorian slowly, her voice small. Sir, Mr. Brandt, I didn't mean to disrespect you. If I'd known... He looked up, calm as still water. You didn't need to know my name to respect me. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Around them, passengers shifted in their seats, each one silently measuring the weight of those words. Then came the chime of an intercom tone, sharp, official, cold. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a temporary delay due to operational issues. Please remain seated. The line cut. Nobody bought it. The woman who'd been recording from the window seat whispered to her phone, "This isn't just a delay. This is corporate collapse in real time." Comments flooded in, hearts and emojis scrolling like ticker tape. Number Brandt freeze. Number flight 472. Dorian's phone buzzed again. A new message from Maggie. Horizon's boardroom is in emergency session. Press statements in 10 minutes. He read it once, then locked the screen. 10 minutes, he murmured. The attendant took a hesitant step closer. Please, sir, if there's anything I can do to fix this. Fix? His tone didn't rise, but it cut through the air. You think this broke today? He turned his gaze toward the cabin windows. No, it's been cracking for years. You just said the quiet part out loud. The captain looked back over his shoulder. Sir, corporate's asking if you'll speak with them directly. Dorian's expression didn't change. They'll have to wait their turn. I'm still boarding humanity here. By doing to a murmur of disbelief passed through the passengers. The businessman in 3C muttered, This guy's ending careers like it's a sport. No, Dorian said quietly. I'm ending patterns. Outside, on the tarmac, mechanics and ground staff had stopped moving altogether. The PA system in the terminal echoed faintly through the open door. Attention all passengers. Horizon Air flights are temporarily suspended pending technical review. iPad. Inside, a small sound broke the silence, the attendant's breath hitching as she realized her entire crew was watching her now, not with sympathy, but with distance. Her authority had evaporated. Mr. Brandt, she whispered, please say something to them. I didn't mean to. He finally turned to face her fully, his voice steady, deliberate. You thought you were protecting policy, he said. You were protecting prejudice. There's a difference. No one dared move. Even the captain stayed still, hands resting on the headrest of his seat. Dorian leaned back again, eyes closing for the first time. In 10 minutes, he said, you'll all hear the announcement. Don't worry, it won't mention my name. It'll just say operation suspended indefinitely. A low gasp rippled through the cabin. The live streamer whispered, He's not bluffing. 8:18 a.m., 12 minutes left on the clock. The countdown wasn't loud, but everyone felt it. The slow heartbeat of a system learning humility for the very first time. Baden Erschiefen, AM 9 minutes before takeoff. The captain's voice had stopped coming through the intercom. The engines had gone completely silent, as if the aircraft itself was holding its breath. In seat 2A, Dorian Brandt sat unmoved, staring at the reflection of himself in the cabin window, a calm silhouette framed by panic. Across the aisle, the attendant who had ordered him out was shaking. Her manicured fingers twisted the edges of her name tag until the metal bent. Captain, she whispered, please tell me this isn't real. He didn't answer. He was too busy watching his tablet refresh again, red alerts crawling across the screen. Horizon operations. Contract suspended. Payment freeze. Initiated by executive owner. Authority. The color drained from his face. He's not bluffing, the co-pilot murmured. 8 minutes left. A voice came over the radio, trembling but clear. Captain Lewis, this is Corporate HQ. Mr. Brandt's authorization has been confirmed. We're grounding all flights effective immediately. Do not depart. The cabin fell into perfect stillness. Every passenger had heard it. A company-wide freeze. The kind of order that could erase thousands of jobs in a single line of code. The attendant turned slowly toward Dorian. You really did this? He looked up. Tone, quiet but razor sharp. No, you did. I just made sure the system noticed. Her breath hitched. From the rear of the cabin, the woman with the phone, now lived to tens of thousands of viewers, whispered, "He's the chairman. He owns Horizon." The chat flooded with reactions. "This is unreal." That's power with dignity. Policy meets justice. The captain took a step closer. Mr. Brandt, sir, what should we tell corporate? Tell them, Dorian said, rising slowly, that their compliance training failed at 35,000 feet. He stood in the aisle now, tall, composed, every eye fixed on him. The tension was electric, the moment when fear met truth. He adjusted his cufflinks, silver catching the cabin light, and continued in the same calm voice. My company doesn't partner with institutions that confuse rules for respect. You called this a misunderstanding. I call it a pattern, one that ends today. He turned to the attendant. I told you to log everything. Did you? She stammered. Yes, sir. Good, he said. Then there will be no debate about what happened here. The captain exhaled shakily. Are we fired? Dorian met his gaze evenly. Not by me, by the standard you broke. He tapped his phone once. A chime echoed. The same second, every display in the first-class cabin flickered, switching from flight info to a blue company notice. Horizon Air temporarily suspended compliance review in progress. Passengers gasped. A baby cried somewhere in economy. The world was officially watching. Dorian slid his phone into his jacket pocket. 30 minutes, he said softly, and the system always tells the truth. The attendant covered her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Please, I didn't know. He stopped her with a single look. That's the problem. You never ask why, you don't know. He turned toward the door, gesturing to the captain. You may deplane your passengers. The flight's over. One, sir. AXO. As he stepped off the aircraft, every phone in the cabin buzzed with the same headline alert. Horizon Air CEO under investigation after shareholder freeze. Sources confirm corporate shutdown initiated by investor Dorian Brandt following alleged discrimination incident aboard Flight 472. The live stream camera followed him through the jet bridge. Quiet, unhurried steps echoing on metal flooring. He never looked back. 8:30 a.m., exactly 30 minutes after the first insult. The entire airline was shut down. And somewhere deep inside the system, a new log entry blinked to life. Case ID 472. Incident resolved, ethics review initiated. 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes after the shutdown. The terminal was chaos. Screens that once shimmered with departure times now glowed an eerie red. All Horizon flights suspended. Gate agents fielded panicked passengers. Executives in tailored suits sprinted through concourses with phones glued to their ears. Somewhere in the distance, a child's voice asked, Mom, did the plane break? No, the plane didn't break. The system did. In a quiet corner of the VIP lounge, Dorian Brandt sat alone, a cup of black coffee untouched beside him. His phone buzzed with calls he wouldn't answer. News alerts scrolled across the television above the bar. Horizon Air faces full-scale audit after discrimination incident goes viral. Brandt Global Holdings suspends $4. 2B partnership. Number flight 472 trending worldwide. Outside the glass, the same attendant was being escorted off the aircraft by airport security. Her perfect posture was gone, replaced by a trembling apology that no one seemed willing to record. The captain followed behind her, head down. The world that had once obeyed their words now treated them like ghosts. A journalist approached Dorian cautiously. Mr. Brandt, sir, Can you confirm the reports that your company froze Horizon's funding? He didn't look up. Confirmation isn't necessary, he said softly. The results speak louder than my voice. The reporter hesitated. Are you angry? Dorian's eyes shifted toward the window, where the grounded fleet shimmered in the morning sun. Anger is short-term, he replied. Accountability lasts longer. Behind him, two members of his own legal team approached. We've started the compliance review, one said. Footage from passengers, logs from operations, and the cabin recording all align. It's airtight. Good, Dorian said. Make sure the review doesn't stop at this crew. I want the training manuals, policy language, and escalation protocols on my desk. We're not firing people. We're fixing the culture that built them. They nodded, understanding the tone. This wasn't revenge. It was reform. Across the terminal, the woman who had streamed the incident stood by a charging station, still watching her video climb past 8 million views. Comments scrolled faster than she could read. Respect with receipts. He didn't shout once. That's how you change the system. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, log everything. Back in the corporate tower downtown, a boardroom full of executives stared at a frozen Zoom screen. The company's general counsel had just read the suspension order aloud. Silence followed. Then an older board member muttered, He warned us last quarter about cultural audits. We ignored it. Not anymore, the counsel said. By noon, every major outlet had picked up the story. CNN played the clip on loop, the calm black CEO sitting in 2A, while chaos unfolded around him. His words echoed like a verdict. You didn't need to know my name to respect me. At Horizon HQ, the CEO issued a trembling statement. We are deeply sorry for the unacceptable behavior that occurred on Flight 472. Horizon Air will undergo immediate retraining and third-party oversight led by Brandt Global. The press called it the fastest corporate reckoning in aviation history. Meanwhile, Dorian left the lounge quietly, jacket folded over his arm, anonymity restored. He wasn't chasing applause, he was chasing alignment, a world where justice didn't need an audience to exist. As he walked through the terminal, a janitor paused, recognizing him. Sir, the man said softly, thank you. People like me, we notice. Dorian nodded once. Then keep noticing, he said. That's how standards stay alive. Outside, the grounded planes shimmered under the noon heat, silent monuments to a lesson written not in outrage, but in order. Because sometimes the loudest justice isn't the one shouted. It's the one logged, audited, and changed system by system forever. 9:30 a.m. 1 hour after the shutdown. The story had already escaped the airport. It was on every feed, every screen, every phone. Morning anchors debated it live. Hashtags flared like flares across the internet. Number Flight 472, number Brandt freeze, number policy and prejudice. To most viewers, it was another viral scandal. To Dorian Brandt, it was the beginning of a reconstruction. He stood now in a conference room 30 floors above the city, skyline gleaming behind him. Around the table sat Horizon's entire executive board, faces pale, shoulders tense, silence thick. No one reached for coffee. No one dared to. Dorian broke the quiet. Let's be clear, he said. I didn't ground your fleet. Your policies did. The CEO, a man in his 50s, visibly shaken shifted in his seat. We understand the gravity, Mr. Brandt. The attendant's been terminated. The captain, Dorian raised a hand. I'm not interested in scapegoats. He turned toward the panoramic window. If one crew could humiliate a passenger on autopilot, it means your training built it in. Silence. The head of HR looked down. Starting today, Dorian continued, Horizon's operations fall under a temporary ethics receivership. You'll keep flying once you prove the culture can. The CEO swallowed. What does that mean, exactly? It means your next boarding announcements will include respect, not just seat numbers. He turned back to the table, eyes steady. Here's what happens next. Independent audits on every gate and lounge. Mandatory anti-bias retraining, certified externally. A new division reporting directly to Brandt Global, staffed by people who've lived what your policies ignore. The PR director began to speak. But Dorian's tone sharpened. This isn't about optics. This is about operations. If your procedures can't pass a moral stress test, they won't pass federal compliance either. A murmur spread among the executives. For the first time in the company's history, they weren't running an airline, they were standing trial. From the end of the table, a voice broke the tension. "Mr. Brandt," said Elena Ruiz, a mid-level compliance officer flown in from Seattle, "I reviewed the cabin footage before I came here. The passenger log you requested, it's complete. The timestamps match your call. Everything checks out." Dorian nodded. "Good work, Ms. Ruiz. You're promoted. Effective immediately, Director of Ethics Integration." Gasps fluttered through the room. Elena blinked, stunned. "Sir, I thank you." He offered a faint smile. "You earned it by telling the truth when everyone else tried to hide it." The CEO looked helpless. "How long will this receivership last?" "As long as it takes," Dorian replied. "You'll submit quarterly progress reports to my office, fail once, and the funding doesn't return. Pass consistently, and you'll rebuild credibility one boarding call at a time." Outside the glass walls, news drones hovered, capturing the skyline shot for evening broadcasts. Inside, the meeting ended with the quiet rustle of papers and the realization that survival would no longer depend on public relations, but on moral architecture. As the boardroom emptied, Elena lingered. "Sir, if I may, why didn't you announce yourself sooner before it escalated?" Dorian adjusted his cufflinks, gazed distant. "Because lessons shouted are forgotten," he said. "Lessons lived stay permanent." She nodded slowly, understanding. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Dorian exhaled once long, deliberate. Down below, dozens of grounded planes still lined the runway, silent testaments to one decision made in 30 minutes. Justice, he thought, wasn't about punishment. It was about structure. And as he walked through the lobby, the same reporter from earlier caught sight of him again, calling out, "Mr. Brandt, any final statement for Horizon Air?" He didn't break stride. "Yes," he said, voice calm as ever. "Tell them the flight may be grounded, but the standard just took off." The cameras flashed, the sound echoed, and somewhere deep inside Horizon's main server, new documents uploaded automatically, training modules, compliance notes, ethics briefings, all stamped with the same closing line: "Log everything." 3 months later, the skies above North America were quieter, but cleaner. Horizon Air was back in operation, cautiously, deliberately, every boarding call still carrying the faint echo of Flight 472. What began as a scandal had evolved into a blueprint. Across the industry, executives whispered about the Brandt Protocol, a 3-stage framework of audit, accountability, and cultural reset. What made it revolutionary wasn't its rules, but its reach. It demanded proof of respect, not just compliance. In a hangar outside Seattle, Dorian Brandt watched as new recruits sat through their first ethics training. No polished corporate slogans, no staged empathy videos, just raw footage. The humiliation, the silence, the look on his face that morning in 2A. The instructor paused the screen. "This," she said, "is what happens when a system forgets who it serves." The recruits sat still, some uneasy, some wiping quiet tears. Dorian remained in the back, unnoticed, notebook in hand. When the session ended, one of the trainees, a young attendant named Marcus, turned around, realizing who had been watching. "Sir," he said nervously, "I didn't know you'd be here." Dorian smiled faintly. "That's the point. You shouldn't have to know who's watching to do the right thing." He walked toward the podium, addressing the class. "You're not just here to fly planes," he said. "You're here to carry dignity at 35,000 feet. And dignity doesn't weigh a pound, but it keeps the world in balance." Outside, reporters were still chasing the story. CNN ran a new segment titled "From Crisis to Code: How Flight 472 Rewired an Industry." The headline photo showed Dorian shaking hands with Elena Ruiz, now head of ethics integration. Her team had implemented the dual log policy, every security interaction recorded from both sides, every passenger concern archived within 24 hours. It wasn't surveillance, it was transparency. The reforms spread faster than expected. Delta, American, even smaller regional carriers adopted parts of the Brandt model. Airports began to install signage with a new line under their safety pledges. Courtesy is compliance. But the change wasn't just corporate, it was human. At a small community college in Atlanta, scholarships funded by Brandt Global opened for underrepresented aviation students. One of the recipients, a young woman named Naomi Lewis, was asked during orientation why she applied. She smiled shyly. Because of that man on Flight 472, she said. He didn't yell, he changed everything. The interviewer blinked. You mean Dorian Brandt? Naomi nodded. He made silence powerful again. Meanwhile, Dorian avoided interviews. He declined TED Talks, turned down magazine covers. Instead, he focused on something quieter. A digital platform that allowed employees across industries to anonymously log incidents of bias and policy abuse, tagged with real timestamps and department data. Its slogan was simple: justice needs receipts. By autumn, it had over 1 million entries. At a small press event, Elena was asked what it felt like to work under him. She smiled. He doesn't lead with fear, she said. He leads with systems. He makes fairness measurable. That evening, Dorian returned to his office overlooking the Seattle skyline. The sun dipped low, glinting off grounded planes that had since taken flight again. His assistant, Maggie, entered quietly. The audit cycle's complete, she said. All metrics passed. 0 discrimination incidents reported this quarter. Dorian nodded once. Good. Archive the data. Anything else, sir? He looked out the window, voice calm. Yes. Send the files to the FAA, the Department of Labor, and the unions. Make it public. If justice works, it shouldn't need secrecy. As she left, he opened his tablet one last time. On the dashboard next to Flight 472's old entry, a new status blinked green. Recertified, ethical compliance. Passed. He leaned back, closing his eyes. 3 months ago, the world had mistaken stillness for weakness. Now it understood. Stillness was structure, and structure, done right, could outlast outrage. 1 year later, the footage of Flight 472 had become more than a viral memory. It was now a case study in every major business school from Stanford to Howard. Professors used it to teach structural ethics, how quiet authority dismantles noisy arrogance. Dorian Brandt's name no longer appeared in trending hashtags. It appeared in policy manuals. Every time a flight attendant ran pre-boarding training, a small plaque at the bottom of the screen read, "In partnership with Brandt Global Ethical Standards, 2026 revision." At the newly built Horizon Diversity and Integrity Center in Seattle, reporters gathered for the one-year audit reveal. A tall banner hung across the atrium, from incident to institution. Beneath it, Elena Ruiz stepped up to the microphone. Once a mid-level compliance officer, now the youngest VP in company history. She spoke calmly, echoing the rhythm of her mentor. A year ago, this company was grounded by its own blindness. Today, it operates under full certification, not because we avoided scrutiny, but because we invited it. Applause filled the hall. Dorian stood quietly at the back, wearing the same dark suit he'd worn on Flight 472. No tie, no spectacle. He didn't need the spotlight. He had built the system that replaced it. The press asked the expected questions. What was the hardest part? Did public pressure push the reforms? Elena answered without hesitation. The hardest part wasn't admitting fault. It was realizing that silence had value, not as surrender, but as evidence. By tenduis maker falls of the... Later, in a closed session, regulators from the FAA and Department of Labor presented Dorian with a framed certification. First Federal Ethics Integrated Airline Partner. The seal at the bottom read, verified through Audit Brandt Protocol compliant. He accepted it with a small nod. You're not giving this to me, he said. You're giving it to every passenger who's ever been told they don't belong. Meanwhile, in cities far from Seattle, the ripple effect continued. Banks, hotels, and law firms began adapting the dual log principle. Whenever discrimination claims arose, they no longer relied on memory, they had timestamps, digital trails, cross-verified data. Justice with receipts had become standard practice. On social media, a quiet trend emerged. Former Horizon employees who'd left in shame started posting stories of return. One caption read, "He didn't cancel us, he calibrated us." Another, "We failed upward because someone froze the system, not the people." That afternoon, Dorian met with Naomi Lewis, the scholarship student who had once spoken about him on camera. Now wearing her trainee uniform, she was preparing for her first long-haul route. She hesitated at the door of his office. "Sir, before I board tomorrow, can I ask something?" "Of course," he said. "What do you want people to remember about Flight 472? He smiled faintly, gazing at the skyline. "That it never took off, but the Standard did." Naomi nodded, eyes bright. "I'll remember that." When she left, Maggie stepped in with an update. "The audit data's gone global, sir. The UK, Canada, even Singapore are adopting the Brandt framework. They're calling it Operational Dignity." Dorian looked amused. "That's a good name. Make sure it stays practical, not poetic." He walked to the window. Down below, planes taxied again under clean skies. Each carried a discreet decal near the nose gear. Log everything. A promise disguised as a procedure. Outside, the world had moved on, but differently less reactive, more deliberate. The noise of outrage had faded, replaced by the hum of systems working as they should. Dorian turned off the lights in his office, leaving only the glow of the city reflecting across the glass. For the first time in a year, he allowed himself to smile. Because justice, he thought, wasn't a moment. It was maintenance. And maintenance done right never makes the news because it prevents the headlines from happening at all. 18 months after Flight 472, the Brandt Protocol had evolved from a corporate repair plan into a global framework. The International Civil Aviation Organization had just voted unanimously to adopt it as the benchmark for all member airlines. What began as a 30-minute humiliation had rewritten international policy. In Geneva, a summit hall gleamed with mirrored panels and translation booths. Delegates from 42 countries filled the semicircle of flags. The event was titled "The Ethics of Air, from Service to Standard." Dorian Brandt sat quietly in the third row, not at the podium. He had declined the keynote invitation, choosing instead to let the system speak for itself. The moderator introduced the first speaker, Miss Elena Ruiz, Vice President of Ethics Integration, Horizon Air. The room applauded as she approached the stage, her voice clear and steady through the microphones. "1 year ago," she began, "we were an airline in crisis. Today, we are proof that accountability scales." She paused, glancing briefly toward Dorian. "Leadership isn't just who signs the checks, it's who signs the logs." Screens behind her lit up with live dashboards showing compliance metrics from across the world. 0 reported discrimination incidents. 97% audit transparency. 95% passenger trust index. A delegate from Japan leaned toward a counterpart from France. "It's the first global quality metric that measures respect," he said quietly. When Elena finished, the applause was thunderous. The moderator smiled. "Before we close, we'd like to recognize the architect of this movement, Mr. Dorian Brandt. Please join us." For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he stood. The cameras whirred. Flashbulbs cracked. He approached the podium with the same unhurried calm that had once terrified an entire airline. He looked out at the crowd, politicians, CEOs, journalists, students. "I'm not here to celebrate," he said. "I'm here to remind." He let the silence breathe. Systems don't change because people apologize. They change when the apology becomes infrastructure. You can't train empathy into policy, you have to wire it into the workflow. A murmur of agreement swept through the room. Dorian continued, "Every time a passenger scans a boarding pass, they're not entering your system, they're testing it. If they walk away unseen or unheard, your software has failed. Don't wait for a scandal to patch your humanity." The translator in the French booth paused, mid-sentence, visibly moved. In the back, Maggie, his longtime assistant, typed notes quietly for publication. "I never intended to be the story," Dorian said, his voice low. "But I'll accept being the lesson." "Why do?" He stepped away from the microphone. The hall rose to its feet. The applause rolled like thunder, not for spectacle, but for order finally aligned with ethics. Later that evening, At the hotel bar overlooking Lake Geneva, Dorian sat alone with his espresso, watching the reflection of city lights ripple across the water. Elena joined him with 2 copies of the day's international papers. Each front page carried a variation of the same headline: "The Brandt Standard Adopted Worldwide. Where was Saul Ming-Baxtery? Wal Ming-Baxtery?" From tragedy to template, how one quiet man rewrote corporate accountability. She placed the papers on the counter. "You realize you just changed global aviation," she said. He smiled faintly. "Aviation was easy," he replied. "Ground culture is harder." She laughed softly. "So what's next?" Dorian looked out toward the lights of the runway in the distance, planes ascending into the night sky like disciplined fireflies. "Next," he said, "we certify hospitality, finance, law, tech, every place that confuses service with servitude." Flight 472 wasn't an ending. It was a launch. Outside, another jet took off, engines humming through the cool Geneva air. And for a moment, the world felt steady, because somewhere between justice and design, someone had found the exact altitude where dignity could fly forever. 2 years after Flight 472, the story had outgrown aviation. Universities taught it, governments cited it, corporations feared it. The Brandt Standard had quietly become a mirror for civilization, a test of who we were when no one was filming. In New York, a museum opened a new exhibit titled "The Architecture of Accountability." Inside, glass panels displayed fragments from that pivotal day: a boarding pass stamped 2A, a flight manifest with the freeze code, the viral phone that captured everything. Visitors moved silently, their reflections merging with the artifacts. A placard read, "Power isn't how loud you speak, it's how precisely you log the truth." In a side gallery, a looping video played Dorian Brandt's words from Geneva. "You can't train empathy into policy, you have to wire it into the workflow." The crowd didn't clap, they listened. It had become scripture for an age tired of slogans. Meanwhile, Brandt Global had evolved beyond an investment group. It was now a standards consortium, issuing certifications across industries, hotels, banks, hospitals, even government agencies. The Brandt seal meant something. Not luxury, but legitimacy. At a Manhattan Roundtable broadcast on PBS, journalists debated its impact. A host leaned forward, asking, "Isn't this just corporate virtue signaling dressed up in data?" Elena Ruiz smiled, seated beside Dorian. "It started as virtue. It became verification," she said. "Because the moment you record respect, you make it repeatable." Dorian said little. He preferred to listen, to watch how society performed its new self-awareness. When the cameras turned off, the host asked him quietly, "Do you ever miss the noise? The adrenaline of shutting down a system?" Dorian shook his head. The goal was never shut down. It was calibration. A system that runs right doesn't make sound. Kaizen Yi. Across the country, schools began introducing ethics coding classes under the Brandt Foundation's grant program. Teenagers in Atlanta, Seattle, and Detroit wrote small algorithms to detect bias in text and tone, labeling invisible prejudice the way antivirus detects malware. They called it justiceware. One of the students, a 17-year-old named Kendra, wrote in her essay, he didn't just freeze an airline, he rebooted the idea of fairness. White-O. That essay won the National Civic Leadership Award. When Dorian read it, he didn't smile, he exhaled. Quietly, that was the sound of legacy. Soft, unbroadcast, continuous. That winter, the Federal Ethics Commission invited Dorian to chair a new advisory panel. The memo called it the Human Systems Board. Its mission, to embed accountability metrics into automation, ensuring that future AI tools carried moral calibration, not just efficiency. At the first meeting, a young developer asked, "Mr. Brandt, what's the first rule?" He answered without looking up, "Never let convenience outrun conscience." The room fell silent. The phrase would later appear in tech charters and government policy guides around the world. Outside, a light snow began to fall across the Manhattan skyline. Dorian watched from the window as taxis crawled below, yellow dots moving like data packets through a living network. Elena joined him, coat draped over her arm. You realize what's happening, right? She said. You didn't just change procedures. You changed language. People use brant as a verb now. To brant means to hold systems accountable. He gave a small, tired laugh. Then maybe we've done enough talking. She nodded. And the rest? The rest is maintenance, he said, repeating the phrase that had become his quiet creed. They stood in silence as snow thickened, blanketing the city in calm precision, a world momentarily free of noise, running exactly as it should. No headlines, no outrage. Just the steady hum of justice doing its job. 3 years after Flight 472, the world had turned the incident into history, yet for Dorian Brant, it still lived in muscle memory. He hadn't boarded a commercial flight since that morning, until today. 9:15 a.m., JFK International Airport, Gate C-17, destination Los Angeles. A Horizon Air jet waited outside the glass wall, fresh livery, new logo, the words integrity certified, Brant standard. The boarding line moved with unhurried grace. The crew smiled with sincerity that wasn't rehearsed, it was recorded. Every interaction logged automatically through the dual log system he'd designed. When Dorian stepped forward, the gate agent scanned his pass. Her monitor pinged softly. Recognition flickered across her eyes, not celebrity awe, but gratitude. Welcome aboard, Mr. Brant, she said. It's an honor to have you with us. He smiled faintly. The honor is seeing you all still flying. Inside the jet bridge, the hum of engines mixed with morning chatter, passengers settled into their seats, unaware or perhaps pretending not to know who was among them. In 2A, he placed his briefcase by the window, the same position as 3 years ago. The flight attendant approached, young, calm, professional. Would you like coffee or water before takeoff, sir? Coffee, he said. Then, after a pause, black. She returned moments later, steady hands carrying a ceramic cup instead of plastic. On the tray sat a small card embossed with Horizon's new motto, "Courtesy is compliance." Dorian read it, nodded, and tucked it into his notebook. From the cockpit, the captain's voice came through, firm but warm. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Horizon Air Flight 942 to Los Angeles. Today marks 3 years since we became the first carrier certified under the Brant standard. On behalf of every employee, thank you for trusting us with your journey. The passengers applauded a soft, genuine rhythm that filled the cabin. The attendant smiled nervously, glancing at Dorian. I didn't write that script, she whispered. I know, he replied. That's why it works. As the plane taxied, sunlight flared across the tarmac, flashing over metal and glass. Through the window, he saw the distant hangar where the audit had begun. He could almost hear the echo of that old command, Sir, this section is for first-class passengers only. Now, 3 years later, the section was still first class, but the definition had changed. First class was no longer a seat, it was a standard. At 9:42 a.m., the jet lifted smoothly into the sky. The engines roared, steady and precise. No interruptions, no conflict, just the sound of professionalism executed perfectly. As the plane climbed through cloud layers, Dorian closed his eyes. In his mind replayed the 30-minute countdown that had rewritten policy worldwide. The memory no longer hurt, it had purpose. He opened his notebook and scribbled a single line beneath the date. Proof ages better than pride. The attendant passed by again, noticing the open page. That's beautiful, she said softly. Is it from a book? It will be, he answered, once I finish writing it. A light laugh rippled between them before she moved on. Somewhere behind him, a teenager whispered to his mother, That's the guy who changed the airlines. His mother whispered back, Then we're safer because he did. Outside, the clouds thinned, revealing a calm stretch of sky. Below, the Atlantic shimmered like tempered glass. Dorian leaned his head against the seat and exhaled. The intercom chimed once more. Cruising altitude achieved, the captain said. Estimated flight time, 5 hours, 10 minutes. Dorian glanced at his watch. Exactly 30 minutes since departure. Half an hour of flawless operation. He smiled, almost imperceptibly. For the first time since that day, he wasn't monitoring the system. He was trusting it. Justice had taken off. And this time, everyone was on board. 3 years and 30 minutes after Flight 472, the same sun that had once glared across an airport tarmac now filtered softly through the windows of a quiet office overlooking Los Angeles. On the glass wall behind Dorian Brandt's desk hung a single framed document, the original audit order that had grounded an airline and awakened an era. Beneath the signature line, in his own handwriting, were 2 words, log everything. He sat at his desk, a cup of coffee cooling beside him, scrolling through the final quarterly report. Horizon Air, 0 bias complaints, 0 unresolved incidents, 100% transparency certification. Across industries, the numbers repeated like a heartbeat. Hotels, banks, logistics, education, each showing proof that dignity could be standardized. A soft knock at the door. Elena Ruiz stepped in, tablet in hand. "It's done," she said. "Every sector has passed verification. The Brandt standard is officially universal." He nodded slowly. "So it holds." "It holds," she said. "The system's clean. Even the watchdogs passed audit." Dorian leaned back, eyes tracing the Los Angeles skyline, bright, precise, alive. The air itself seemed quieter these days, as though the world had learned to breathe without shouting. Elena hesitated. "There's one more thing. The museum wants to retire the Flight 472 exhibit. They asked if you'd like to donate anything personal, something to close the story." He smiled faintly. "Stories like that don't close, Elena. They become architecture." "Want to make some BDR wall?" She tilted her head. "Then what should they display instead?" He thought for a moment, then replied, "The final audit log. The line where the system corrected itself." She nodded, understanding instantly. A record, not a relic. "Exactly." As she left, the intercom chimed with a soft notification. A message from Maggie, his assistant, appeared on the screen. Subject final entry. All systems operational. No pending investigations. No active audits. Flight 472 officially archived. He typed back just 2 words, "Stay watching." Then he stood, crossing the office to the large window. Outside, a Horizon Air jet ascended smoothly into the morning light. White fuselage, silver wings, and near the nose the small, unassuming decal that had become his signature. Log everything. He watched until it disappeared into the clouds. The phone buzzed again. A live notification flashed. Student Ethics Conference, keynote opening. On the stage, Naomi Lewis, the former scholarship recipient, stood behind a podium, addressing a room full of new recruits. Her voice filled the speakers in his office. "Justice isn't noise," she said. "It's maintenance. The Brandt Standard taught us that every form, every file, every word we write has weight. We don't fix people, we fix processes." Applause erupted through the feed. Dorian smiled quietly. "She's ready," he whispered. He opened a fresh page in his notebook and wrote what would become the final line of his private journal. "Justice achieved isn't the end of the system. It's the start of stewardship." He closed the notebook and set it beside the framed audit order. The sunlight glinted across the polished desk, catching the reflection of his old boarding pass. Seat 2A, Flight 472. A subtle chime sounded. Again his system's nightly cycle, syncing, archiving, renewing, everything running clean. Outside, another aircraft climbed through a corridor of clear blue sky. Engines steady, wings leveled with the horizon. Dorian whispered the phrase that had once dismantled an empire and built a better one. Log everything. Then he turned off the lights. In the quiet hum of the office, the automated log time-stamped one final entry. Case file, Subaichishar, status, resolved, action. Legacy, sustained. Next review, every generation. The screen dimmed to black, and somewhere far above the city, another flight reached cruising altitude. Proof that order, once built on respect, could stay airborne forever.